Welcome to part 2 of my 100 favourite goth albums ranking. So hold on to your hats if you want, it's not windy. Welcome to By Candlelight, beaming goth, darkwave and post-punk straight into your brain. Although try not to post-punk, it always gets caught on the letterbox. So you've seen part 1, probably. If you haven't, it's probably up there, looking at me in disgust. So today, we continue with ranking 74 to 51. Quick reminder, these are my personal favourites ranked, so I'm not saying that these are the best albums in the subculture. I can feel a shall we get on marching towards me. So let's do it. At 74, Traitors, Rites and Ritual. Is it an EP or an album? Sounding a little bit like early Cure, but with extra topping, this band is on the lips of most of us. This debut from 2016 catches the Toronto-based band a little bit before they leaned more into post-punk revival. There may be melodic elements that serve as a precursor to future albums, such as on Witch Trials and Youth Cults. But elsewhere, there are quite a few tracks on this album that could sit quite comfortably on a parallel universe version of The Cure's Pornography, in my opinion. A really strong first release and worthy of attention. 73, Aghast with There is no way on heaven or on earth I'll be able to say that album name. A quick Google translation later and we get Witchcraft in the Twilight of Darkness. Looking at that album cover, you're gonna think metal, and quite a few streaming platforms have labelled this as metal. It's not metal. This 1994 album feels like a collection of rituals where the manifestations of the rituals have also made it onto the recording. It's like it's blurred the line between the summoning and the summoned. It's overwhelmingly haunting and avant-garde, but totally brilliant and very addictive. You probably wouldn't play this at your aunt's birthday party. 72, Pink Turns Blue, Ghost. This is my favourite album from this German band. Bearing in mind that this is their 9th album, it's usually the earlier albums that would make their mark on me. You might have an earlier album of theirs that you prefer. I was won over by the tracks Last Days on Earth and No More Reason. If you don't know this band, please do check out their other albums. 71, Then Comes Silence with Then Comes Silence. On later albums, this Swedish band would polish their sound. Nothing wrong with that, but this debut catches them at their most raw. With most of it being gloriously noisy, you can hear these old school horror elements, such as the use of back-to-back semitones. Check this one out. 70, Rose Garden Funeral Party, Martyr. This Texas band's 2019 debut may be melodic, but singer Leah Lane brings a voice that earths it within the subculture. Also check out the album In the Wake of Fire. 69, Anna von Hauswolf, Dead Magic. This Swedish singer's 4th album may begin with the uplifting The Truth, The Glow, The Fall, but get to the Diamanda Gallas channeling of the mysterious vanishing of Elektra, and you'll see why I've included this album here. At just 5 tracks, most of these are long pieces with changing moods. Take Ugly and Vengeful. It tempts you into the room with some siren-like phrases before locking the door and bombarding you with an evil pipe organ. I know I've talked about this album before, but will you just look at that Exorcist-style cover? A darkly enchanting album. 68, Lebanon Hanover, The World is Getting Colder. To be honest, I didn't get Lebanon Hanover to begin with, so not only did they win my affections, but they also made it onto this list. This Swiss-British band were formed in 2010 and have an impressive back catalogue. The World is Getting Colder was their debut, and I just love how direct it is. Disembodied voices with straightforward arrangements create an album that has quite a bit of variety. Add into that the dual vocals and you have a solid cold wave album. Check out Die World and Ice Cave. 67, Pretentious Moi with Pretentious Moi. With just this one album released in 2010, this has got that classic sound, and you'll know exactly what I mean when you hear it. Mixing guitars and synths sufficiently to create this glorious dark sponge cake. This is a great example of modernish goth. And singer Tim Chandler is no stranger to these here parts, as he is also a member of the band Manuscript. This whole album is strong, but check out Faith and Reason Part Company. Now go and eat that dark sponge cake. 66, Jarboe, Sacrificial Cake. More cake. You can't have too much cake. Formerly of New York-based band Swans, Jarboe has a significant discography. It's really, really hard to choose my favourite of hers, but I finally went for 1995's Sacrificial Cake. Beginning quite ambiently with Lavender Girl, this album slowly brings in these experimental elements. Then we get the guttural My Buried Child, which is where we really see the other side of the album. Ultimately avant-garde, this is an album rich in lots of different styles, but all within the realm of darkness. 65, Vendemian Transition. Forming in 1992, then splitting up in 1997, then reforming in 2008. It's been a bit on, off, then on again for Vendemian. My favourite is 1996's Transition. This is that classic mid-90s sound with hazy reverb, roughing up the edges of the more melodic moments. A great album in its entirety. I did go through a stage of playing Three's a Crowd on loop, so please check that one out. 64, The Southern Death Cult with The Southern Death Cult. I've always associated the cult more with rock, which is why I've gone with the previous iteration of the band. Even then, this is a compilation, and it stands as the sole release of a collection of tracks from that version of the band. More sparse and without the guitar pomp of later albums, you really notice the drums push forward in the mix on this one. A fine collection of single tracks, radio sessions and live performances. Sanctuary Selling would come later. 63, Cocteau Twins, Garlands. With the Cocteaus, you really do need to head to their debut if you're looking for an album to be included on a list like this. As much as I love them, they did latch onto dream pop quite quickly. But with Garlands, Elizabeth Fraser's voice that would normally be associated with fluffy clouds and warm baths is very much in your face here. You can still find darkness on their next album, Head Over Heels, but from then on it got janglier and fluffier, but no less brilliant. 62, Lestat, Vision of Sorrows. This band from Cleveland formed in 1989, and it's their third album that I've gone for. Framing darkwave around the use of samples, this is an immersive album. Check out the track Irrelevance for starters. They would go on to make one more album, Arisen, in 2012 before splitting. A great band. 61, Mors Syphilitica, Feather and Fate. This New York band released 3 albums during their relatively short existence. 2001's Feather and Fate was their last album and is the one I have chosen. Lisa Hammer's almost operatic voice distinguished Mors from other bands around at the time, even though this album has its fair share of Cocteau Twins-esque elements. Check out the witchy between Feather and Fate and the epic Galatea. 60, Götterdämmerung of Whores and Culture. This band, formed in Germany in 1991, combines goth rock and death rock, and it looks like this album is their 5th. Hearing the track Bleeding Wooer in a club has pretty much placed this album fondly in my dark heart. The two approaches can be clearly heard. Bleeding Wooer and Hormel ooze deathrock, while First In Man, The Prow and No Deviation sit more comfortably in goth rock. The variety works really well, making this an exhilarating album. 59, Love Like Blood and Irony of Fate. Apparently named after the Killing Joke track, Germany's Love Like Blood were active between 1989 and 2011. This, their second album, came out in 1992. Don't be fooled by the, I think, synthesized trumpet on The Everlasting Dream. It does turn into a satisfying slab of goth rock. It continues in the same vein until More Than Salvation slows it down a bit. A very satisfying album. 58, The Eden House, Smoke and Mirrors. This supergroup, with its ever-changing stream of guest vocalists, was formed in 2007. For me, Smoke and Mirrors stands as their best. But would you just look at the musicians on this album? Stephen Kerry of This Burning Effigy, various members of the Neth, Monica Richards, Julianne Reagan and Evie Vine. It's a flawless collection. I don't think there's one track I don't like. Absolute favourites are To Believe in Something, Sin and All My Love. One of my most played albums. 57, The New Arctic, Vault. At this point, Vault is the sole studio album from Californian artist Eleanor X. The predominantly electronic backing is humanised by the gorgeous vastness of her voice. This is a strong album, but do check out Essence and The Obsessed. 56, Tropic of Cancer, Restless Idols. The solo project of Camila Lobo, this remains her only studio album to date. Released in 2013, this album very rarely breaks into a trot. Largely electronic and just bathing in reverb and effect. It's Camilla's distant wails and moans that hold your attention. I mean, there are lyrics as well. It's not just one big groan. If the music of Children of a Lesser God is vaguely positive, Camilla's disembodied voice ensures that it still sounds ultimately unsettling. Check out More Alone and Plant Lilies at My Head. 55, Rosetta Stone and Eye for the Main Chance. This remains a classic of early 90s goth. It plays almost like a greatest hits album. I can't name a track that I would skip. Sadly, the band lost their way after this album and they never really regained the popularity that they got with Main Chance. But this remains a solid album. Check out Shadow, An Eye for the Main Chance and Subterfuge. 54, The Last Dance, Perfect. This Californian band was formed in 1990 and this is their third album. I really love their previous album, Fairy Tales, as well, but I feel that this one is a better fit for this list. It doesn't waste any time on Opener Parade and keeps that same pace for the next 3 tracks. Without Words may feel a little out of place on this album, but gorgeous it still is. And that's the beauty of this band. They're not afraid to bring in tracks full of light and positivity. 53, Ash Code, Perspective. Formed in 2014, this band have 3 studio albums to date. Fantastically electronic, with the bass being the only acoustic instrument. They layer on the effects to really meld this album together. Occasional female vocals provide variety on an already thrilling album. Check out Ice Cold and Disease. 52, The Soft Moon, Deeper. What I always loved about the progression of The Soft Moon was that it all started quite claustrophobic with this affected and whispered voice. Then slowly on each subsequent album, the voice and the music would gradually open out and become a lot more widescreen, sometimes even quite industrial. Whilst I love all of the Soft Moon albums, it's Deeper that really blew me away. Whilst Black may tread a familiar path to earlier albums, it's Far that will hit you. You're just not expecting this racing adrenaline rush, and this definitely has to be my favourite Soft Moon track. It brings everything down on Wasting before revving it back up again on the Nine Inch Nails sounding Wrong, an essential album. 51, Voodoo Rage at the End of the World. Viewers of this channel will know that I've fawned over this album on a number of occasions. In fact, this was my album of 2024. If you like bands such as Boy Harsher, this will be for you. Delicious in its darkness. The songwriting is amazing. Please do check out my full review because these guys are the ones to watch. So that brings us to the end of part 2. Let me know if you've discovered anything new on this 74 to 51 list. And has this inspired you to make your own ranking? Join me next week as I dive into the hot tub of the top 50. Until next time, see you later.